Transmission testing on Craftsman's Lawnmower tractor. William Hovey Smith, 2023.
This is Hovey Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. And we are continuing our teardown of this old Craftsman's lawnmower. One thing we are discovering is that many lawnmowers of about the same vintage are in fact much the same lawnmowers, irregardless of what brand they happen to be. This lawnmower, for example, uses nearly the same components, or many of them, as similar mowers made by Craftsman and also the Cub Cadet. So, if you have one of these older vintage lawnmowers, parts from one that seems to be off-brand may well be identical.
Parts that I've already salvaged from this mower include the back plate, which I placed on the mower I'm rebuilding because it already had attachments for the bagger, as well as the seat, which was in better shape than the one I was working on, and others, such as the hood. So we're getting down to the rear end, and we're going to tear into that this episode. The problem with the rear end is that the wheels are locked. You put them in any gear and they still drag. Although I've loosened the belt here on the drive wheel, and you do that by taking it off the idler wheel, which is under the right hand side of the lawnmower, but it's still not quite free enough to come off without removing some other components first, just to get them out of the way. Now the drive wheel is retained by this little key here. So you need one of these tools, and this one happens to have a variable teeth on it, so it will remove different sizes of these retaining rings. Now if you try to twist this thing off, which may be tough indeed anyway, without removing this ring, well, you're going to run into even more problems. I had thought this might be a threaded nut, but it's actually not. It's a friction fit, and there's a keyway in it, so you just pull it off by tapping it underneath. And I'll have it loose enough, and I believe I can just wiggle it off. Come on now. There we go. And the belt, which is sort of welded to this, yeah, there, just so much rust on it. Whoa. Okay. This housing is all aluminum, and you have steel nuts and bolts holding it to the frame and the operating components. Whereas these four with self-threading screws, this one, although it uses the same head size, is actually a nut and bolt. So that sort of surprised me. But what I'm in the process of doing is removing these side plates so that I can actually free the rear end. Now that I have this free, yes, that just falls off. All right. We have this shaft here that runs the width of the machine. It does two things. One, it stabilizes the rear of the machine in this direction. And secondly, it contains the Gearshift components, this arm in particular. And this has another one of these retainer keys on the end of the shaft. Turned out to be a different kind of key, which is okay. And now that will pull away, I think. Washer. Okay, I'll probably have to drive that one through. Now that we have the Gearshift rod assembly loose on both sides here, we can pull this screw right here, then lift the linkage, not quite. I have a hang. We have one more little nut right there. Okay. To support this channel, buy my outdoor books, business books, and novels, and recommend them to your local libraries. With a little gentle persuasion with the bar here, I was able to pop this off. So now, perhaps we can resume. Okay. Yes. All right. So we now have this linkage intact, but free. Held it on, so that's why it wouldn't come off. Now we have the transmission exposed, and basically nearly free of the machine except for the axle. And it is now held on by 4 bolts and nuts here, connecting it to the axle and connecting it to the frame. We're seeing 2 very interesting ways of mechanical fabrication. This, the frame, is one folded piece of sheet metal. It started out as a flat plate, guaranteed. Whereas this is an industrial casting from aluminum. 2 different types of manufacturing methods, very likely done in 2 completely different factories, but put together to make this Craftsman lawnmower. What have we discovered thus far in disassembly about the rear end? Well, these linkages, the gear shift arrangement, is apparently exactly the same as the lawnmower I'm restoring. A little more weathered perhaps, but identical. And the reason this lawnmower was parked had nothing to do with the transmission, even though I had to tow it on this porch. Wheels run fine, no noise in the transmission at all. This is a sealed unit. This is the plug right here where you would put in fluid if you ever needed it, but apparently none is leaking, and it sounds wonderful. Did a good job. All right. I'm not going to drop this transmission or take the wheels off yet, because I need the height to work the rest of the mower. So for now, this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe. Goodbye, God bless, and see you next time.